Adnan Khashoggi wasn't just rich, he was the symbol of outrageous wealth, international power, and scandalous luxury.
We were talking actually about this before we came onto the program. What was actually his thinking? What was his motivation?
Do you know Adnan Khashoggi? Do you have any?
Well, I think looking at the past, we should really just, as we said earlier, is learn from it. But we have a future, and we have a future to establish and take advantage of this peace effort that is being negotiated now. And I think the man, if he's still the leader of Iraq and people want him to be their leader, fine. I think he got enough of a shock that he might be guided, at least for the time being, to zero his thinking basically on rebuilding Iraq and homing his people that have been destroyed during that period of, and also concentrate basically in creating a Kuwait that is back, get the families back into their home. And I think this is a good effort. And the presence of the Americans there and the British and all the allies that should be a securing force also to the Israelis to consider to give the Palestinian home, and let's all live in one peace and accept the policing at this moment for the next 5 years of our friend the Western world, and this is the only power left. The Russians have gone.
We would support American ground forces in the Middle East for the next 5 years?
If it means regional peace and prosperity for the area, why not?
It might provoke some reactions in the area which wouldn't make peace.
I don't think so. I think it's like Sadat when he went to Israel. He broke the psychological barrier of hate waves to the Israelis and the Jewish people, followed by Arafat himself recognizing the Israelis. All these things do happen. Now the fact that the Americans and the British came to liberate Kuwait, there is a lot of respect and prestige for them in the Arab world, and where it counts, you know, where the area of concentration of capital which is needed to develop Egypt, to develop Morocco, to develop Algeria, to develop Tunis, to develop all these areas, including Israel. You know.
Dubbed as the Great Gatsby of the Middle East, he made billions brokering arms deals between Western defense giants and the Saudi government. At his peak in the 1980s, his net worth hit a staggering $4 billion. But it wasn't just the money that got people talking. Khashoggi's life looked like a literal movie, with private jets, palaces, and a yacht so massive it made the headlines. He didn't just have one wife, or even two. He had 3 official wives, and 11 more women that he called his pleasure wives. No one really knew what actually went on, at least not until years later, when former model Jill Dodd, one of his so-called pleasure wives, finally broke the silence. So, what really happened behind all the gold, glamour, and excess? In this video, we're pulling back the velvet curtain on the untold life of Adnan Khashoggi, the myths, and the shocking truth behind his infamous harem. Welcome back to Never Ending Celebrities. Adnan Khashoggi was born in Mecca to a family already close to power. His father, Mohammed Khashoggi, was the personal doctor to King Abdulaziz Al Saud. His mother, Samiha Ahmed, came from Syrian roots. From a young age, Khashoggi was surrounded by Saudi Arabia's elite. While in school, he became friends with Hussein bin Talal, who would later become the King of Jordan. Even as a student, Khashoggi showed a sharp eye for business. When one classmate's father wanted to import towels and another's father made them, young Adnan made the connection and earned $1,000 from the deal. It was his first taste of being a middleman, and it wouldn't be his last. Years later, he founded Triad International Holding Company, investing in luxury hotels, oil, and real estate. His lavish lifestyle, filled with celebrities and politicians, turned him into a media icon, even inspiring Queen lyrics and TV shows. As Adnan Khashoggi's reputation grew, so did his wealth and his commissions. At one point, he was reportedly earning up to 15% on arms deals, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And with that kind of money, the setting for closing deals became just as grand as the deals themselves. He went through yachts the way you and I go through cars, said his biographer Ronald Kessler.
He had 3 commercial-sized jet planes. He had the Nabila, a 252-foot yacht, which was used in the in the movie Never Say Never Again. And he was this preeminent arms dealer who made these deals between Saudi Arabia and the United States. So what was behind all this, and how did he do it?
By 1980, Khashoggi owned the largest private yacht in the world, a 281-foot floating palace named Nabila after his daughter. This was no ordinary vessel. It had a bulletproof sun deck, a solid gold sink in the master suite, and interiors that screamed over-the-top opulence. It wasn't just a yacht, it was a status symbol. But Khashoggi's empire wasn't built alone. In 1961, he married Sandra Daly, a 20-year-old Englishwoman who converted to Islam and took the name Soraya Khashoggi. Born in Leicester and raised in hardship by a single mother, Soraya's life did a full 180 when she entered Khashoggi's world. Suddenly, she was dripping in diamonds and fur, waited on by armies of staff, flying in private jets, and mingling with legends like Elizabeth Taylor and Frank Sinatra. Together, Soraya and Adnan had one daughter, Nabila, and 4 sons, Mohammed, Khalid, Hussein, and Omar. For years, they lived a life straight out of fantasy. 17 lavish homes, a rotating cast of celebrity friends, and the kind of luxury few could even imagine. But their fairy tale didn't last. With Khashoggi's playboy tendencies of switching between women and constantly betraying her, Soraya finally had enough. By the mid-1980s, their marriage had collapsed into a public and bitter divorce. The headlines were wild. Soraya had his private jets impounded, while Adnan allegedly abducted their 5 children. The drama didn't stop there. After the split, Soraya became a tabloid staple in her own right, linked romantically to a long list of famous men: Warren Beatty, Roman Polanski, Sammy Davis Jr., James Hunt, and even Winston Churchill's grandson. British politician Jonathan Aitken was eventually revealed to be the father of her daughter, Katrina. Though she was reported to have received hundreds of millions in the divorce, Soraya later claimed she got no cash at all. "All I wanted were the children," she said in an interview. "They were the most important thing for me." Whatever happened to the money, Soraya's story turned tragically humble. By the early 1990s, she was no longer the queen of high society. In her 50s, dealing with health issues and weight gain from steroid medication, she was found renting a modest £400-a-month home in a quiet English town, selling second-hand goods just to get by. Later, she returned to London and opened a flower shop, which she also used as the setting for an unpublished murder mystery novel titled Bloom. Today, she reportedly lives in a small flat in West London, rented through a trust. But Soraya wasn't the only woman to leave her mark on Khashoggi's story. In 1978, he married his second wife, Laura Biancolini, a 17-year-old Italian who also converted to Islam and became Lamia Khashoggi. Together, they had a son, Ali, and remained married until Khashoggi's death. Khashoggi's third legal wife was Shahpare Azam Zanganeh, whom he married in 1991 and divorced in 2014. Like his other marriages, this one has also brought its own mix of mystery and tension. Sources claim that Soraya had long-standing feuds with Lamia and her son Ali. Even Nabila, Khashoggi's once-beloved daughter, reportedly fell out with him in the later years. Nabila went on to become a children's author and philanthropist, living a quieter life in New York. But not all of Khashoggi's romantic entanglements were legally binding. Outside of his 3 official marriages, he maintained what many described as a harem, a group of at least 12 young women known as his pleasure wives. These weren't just flings, they traveled with him, lived lavishly, and were often seen aboard his yachts and estates. One of them, Jill Dodd, a former model and fashion designer, later wrote a memoir called The Currency of Love, where she revealed the intimate details of life inside Khashoggi's harem. She met him in 1980, and her story painted a complex picture. A man of deep charm, enormous power, and bottomless extravagance. The backdrop to this decadence? A sprawling villa in Marbella, Spain, called Baraka, where the Khashoggi family hosted some of the most extravagant parties Europe had ever seen. Guests included global stars, pop icons, and political figures like former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. At one of the most legendary events, a 5-day birthday bash for his son in Vienna, Khashoggi reportedly spent $250,000 a day just to keep the party going. Another one of his estates, Olpejata Conservancy in Kenya, was a luxurious retreat at the foot of Mount Kenya. Back then, it was known as the Mount Kenya Safari Club. Today, it's a serene hotel run by Serena Hotels, but the original house still holds whispers of Khashoggi's grand legacy. With a lifestyle so extravagant and a cast of characters so colorful, it's no wonder he earned the nickname, the Great Gatsby of the Middle East. But behind all the wealth, the power, and the yachts, there were personal stories tucked away, ones that wouldn't come to light until much later. One of the most revealing voices was Jill Dodd, a former model and the woman who would go on to co-found the popular surfwear brand Roxy. In the early 1980s, Jill was a 21-year-old aspiring model. Living in Paris, she had no idea that her life was about to be swept into the orbit of one of the most powerful men in the world. It all started at a party on the French Riviera, where she locked eyes with a charming, mysterious man on the dance floor. The chemistry was instant. At one point during their wild, magnetic dance, he picked up a chair and tossed it into the fire, and Jill did the same. They laughed, spun, and fell into each other's world without warning. Moments later, he gently pushed up her sleeve and, with a fingertip, wrote, "I love you" on her forearm, in blood. Whether intentional or not, he had cut himself on a piece of glass. She was stunned, and before she could process what was happening, she was being invited aboard his legendary yacht. It was only then that she found out who he really was, Adnan Khashoggi, one of the richest men in the world. Khashoggi explained that although he had a legal wife, Saudi law permitted him up to 11 pleasure wives. These women weren't officially married to him, but they were a part of his life, romantically, emotionally, and often physically. And soon after their whirlwind first encounter, he asked Jill to become one of them. Their time together was a blur of luxury and decadence, lavish dinners, designer clothes, high society parties. They would sometimes lock themselves away in a private room for days, just the two of them, wrapped in love, lust, and a haze of privilege. We would make love, eat, the chef would bring us food, we'd do cocaine, sleep when we wanted, or not sleep at all, Jill later recalled in an interview. It was a fantasy to the outside world, but for her, it was also deeply personal and complex. Despite the unusual nature of their relationship, Jill insisted she never saw herself as a hooker and still doesn't. She was young, in love, and caught up in a world that most could only dream of. Yet, even as she enjoyed the spoils of that lifestyle, she never gave up her independence, her ambition, or her creative fire. After 2 years with Khashoggi, he offered to pay her tuition at one of America's top design schools. She accepted and used that education to build something entirely her own. In 1989, Jill co-founded Roxy, a now iconic brand in women's surfwear. Eventually, though, the cracks started to show. Towards the end of 1981, Jill started to feel uncomfortable with the arrangement. What once felt like a dream began to lose its magic and started to feel too stuffy to stay. By 1982, she walked away from Khashoggi and the world he had pulled her into. Today, Jill lives in Marin County, California, with her husband and children. She's told her full story in her memoir, The Currency of Love. And though the romance ended, the experience shaped her in ways few could understand. "I have no regrets," she said. "But I never forfeited my independence, ambition, or creative expression." Even after Jill Dodd left and the world slowly began to change around him, Adnan Khashoggi's appetite for luxury never faded. Despite once commanding a net worth in the billions, by 1990, it was said to have dwindled to just $8 million. For a man who used to burn through $250,000 a day, that was a dramatic fall from grace. On June 6, 2017, Adnan Khashoggi died at St. Thomas's Hospital in London after battling Parkinson's disease. He was 81 years old, once a central figure in global power circles, rubbing shoulders with kings, presidents, Hollywood icons, and arms dealers. Khashoggi passed away quietly, far from the spotlight that had once defined him. But what do you think? With 3 official wives, a dozen pleasure wives, and countless romances, did Adnan Khashoggi ever truly fall in love? Let us know in the comments. And if stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe for more deep dives into the lives of the world's most intriguing figures.